Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
I have been talking away and my phone has been muted, but here we are now. I will repeat everything I said because it was muted. That I'm here celebrating one of my favorite artists today, and that's Sean Patrick Murtagh. How are you, Sean?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Look great.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The fact that you're up on a pedestal, looking down on me, as you should be.
I just have to keep up the appearance of being as extra as I put out there on Facebook and Instagram. But yes, I am actually on a pedestal.
Well, I want to begin, as I begin all my shows, by asking how you're doing really in the midst of this crazy time that we find ourselves in.
I'm doing as well as I can, and that isn't necessarily bad. I grew up with two wonderful parents who taught me so much, and as much as they taught me, one of the best things was about being realistic, which does not mean not being hopeful, but really being realistic. This is the case, this is the scenario, and this is what you have to do, which is just keep going, because things are what they are. And so that's what I've been up to, is just keep going. These are the facts that I know. These are the facts that we know. And this is what I have to get done for myself.
Now, one of the things that I love about you is you, from the very beginning, took the bull by the horn, so to speak, and started doing your live streams from your apartment, which are always fun, in your various turbans and caftans and cocktails. How did the idea for that come about? And I can only imagine, first of all, I have to ask you, how many roommates do you have?
I have 2 roommates.
And is it always a party in your apartment?
Sometimes, yes. We have a wonderful setup around here. So we have this large living space. It's not a huge apartment, but we have this large living space. And then our rooms are surrounded around it. So our rooms are kind of separate from each other, but then we have this beautiful communal space where we come to. So we can be apart. We have spacious rooms, and we can be together. And we do Netflix binges. Right now we're on our holiday movie binge. So last night we did Mame, because that is technically a Christmas movie in this house. And we've been doing that, and we have fun. We have wine. We have charcuterie. And they've been very supportive. We've been living together for quite a while now. So they're used to me vocalizing all the time, or as one of my roommates called me one time, the flamboyant ghost is back.
And are they in the business as well?
They are adjacent. So one was an actor and is very talented, and I hope that he does consider, once things reopen, coming back in. He has a 9-to-5 job now, but he's so talented. He's so funny. I actually brought him in to do a reading for a friend of mine. and he stole the show. And I was like, oh, note to self, never invite him again. And the other one isn't an actor. He's a playwright, but he started off as an actor and all that. So it's a very artistic household, and they've been very supportive. They watch my live streams to make sure that we have no glitches with sound. They bring me ice.
I did, yes.
Right. They bring me ice when it's time to make the cocktails, and it's just they've been extremely supportive, and I'm very fortunate. We are very fortunate. You know, this is crazy circumstances we're under, and in New York, you're on top of each other anyways. But then to be in a lockdown to where you are. I mean, it's like being a married couple. Like I can't escape you. And you know, we have ups and downs, but I really think we struck roommate gold.
Well, that's amazing. You know, during my 20s in New York, I went through a string of roommates, bizarre situations that I could write a book on someday. And I said, if I ever do write a book, it's going to be called Roommate! Exclamation point. The exclamation point will be a dagger with a drop of blood underneath it.
God.
And I want to talk about the path that led to you coming to New York, finding your roommates, and etc. You mentioned earlier that you had two very supportive parents.
Yes.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I have a village full. So I have my two brothers, and then my parents. Our house was kind of the neighborhood house, and so we have siblings beyond our blood ties that have been there since day one. So I have extended brothers outside of my immediate family, and we are all one huge family. Our neighbors across the street have been a part of our family since as long as I can remember, and it's really wonderful. And my brothers are very supportive. The first couple years I was in New York, they would fly me back home to make sure I could come home, and they have always been there. They bring friends to my concerts in San Francisco. My parents, I could not ask for two more support. My mom got side jobs to pay for classes. My dad worked 7 days a week, and not just for me, for all of us to have the opportunities we wanted. But you know, when I was in a show in college, they flew down. When I'm doing something in New York, they fly out, and they work. It's not just that they drop everything. They work still to this day to be able to do that. And to support me as I continue working in New York City. And I mean, my parents, they're wonderful. I mean, I talk about them nearly every show and everything I do. They are wonderful people.
Well, I will applaud them because they did a very good job.
Thank you.
Not all parents fit that mold, you know that.
Yes.
So you know, count your blessings this Thanksgiving season. What did your parents do? Tell us a little bit about your father and your mother and what their professions are or were.
Yeah. So my mom works in college and career at a high school in the Bay Area in California, and she's been doing working in public high schools. Actually, what got her into public high schools was when we were in preschool. The high school that I ended up going to when I was in high school had a preschool, and it was this class to teach kids how to, like, this is the reality. So you take care of a 4-year-old for one period a day, and so they had this preschool that was called child development. So I was the first class for that preschool, and then I was the teacher's retiring year. So when we went to preschool, my mom had to work, but she wanted to be around us. So she got a job at that preschool, and then ended up worked her way up into the high school, and then continued on into the College and Career Center, which she's been amazing at getting kids every single scholarship they can. She got me every single scholarship that she could. And my father started his career as a stationary engineer at the Embarcadero Center in San Francisco. And he did that for a little over 25 years. And then he moved up to the director of engineering for the Embarcadero Center for Boston Properties. And he's been doing that for almost at least 20 years. So yeah, he started young and still going. And then, you know, they did various side jobs whenever it was school dance time, my mom would make garters and sell garters for the proms and everything. So our house, like, I grew up around Marabou. I'm like, wow, I really could not have asked for a better upbringing. Marabou and hot glue guns everywhere. I think my mom's
it's still there.
Yes, it is like glitter. I'm sure my mom is disappointed I did not become a drag queen, but I am not a beautiful woman. So
that doesn't stop some, you know that.
Indeed. And so yeah, and my dad did various side jobs, electrical, plumbing, construction around our city that we grew up in, and yeah.
Well, the city that you grew up in is San Francisco, one of my favorite cities on the planet.
Yeah.
And I want you to take us back to the 5-year-old Sean and what your life was like as a kid growing up in San Francisco. Was your family exposed to the arts? What kind of music did you listen to in your home?
So I actually was born in San Bruno, which is right outside. That's where the airport is. So we're like the Astoria of San Francisco. But my family is all tied. My grandparents all immigrated to San Francisco. This was their first point of origin. 2 from Ireland, 1 from Mexico, and 1 from El Salvador. And Noe Valley and the Mission is like where our family history starts. And so many people are still there. But yeah, I was definitely exposed to the arts around my mom, huge musical theater nerd. And when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, we were old enough to kind of like be a little more self-sufficient. And so she started doing community theater. And she went back to singing. She sang in church, and her best friend, Ellen, was a music director of the church. So I grew up very musical. With that, I actually, believe it or not, I could not match pitch as a child, and it was wow. Oh yeah. So if you ever see a video and there's a woman named Ellen, she will usually be like, I just remember when you couldn't match pitch and listen to you now. Every comment, every time she sees a video of me, that's what she says, and it's true. And that's from the hard work that my mom getting me the right teachers, and it's because I wanted to sing, and I just sounded like 2 cats fighting. But yes, I grew up. She was singing in church, and my father's family is very musical. My dad has a very lovely baritone sound to him. But in Ireland, they were poor and didn't have TV, so all the children played an instrument. So I grew up definitely around music, around the arts, going to see my mom in theater until I had the courage to join her on stage.
Well, I was going to ask you, how old were you the first time that you saw your mom in a theatrical production, and what was the production?
The first show was Oliver.
Oh.
And she was Charlotte, which is I can't remember, Noah Grimsby. It's his girlfriend.
Yes.
And she was so annoying.
Noah Claypole.
There we go.
I played Noah.
Yes.
It was one of the last shows that I did with my hometown theater before I came to New York.
So she wore this dress. I think it might have been. So, the 80s was an interesting time. My uncle got married in the late 80s, and they had these amazingly princess-style bridesmaids dress. And I think that might have been what my mom used. And she repurposed that dress for everything. She was a pumpkin fairy one year. She had little ringlet curls, and it was just so crazy and so funny. And she did the shows, and we were involved. So I was put to work in the costume shop. My other brothers were painting sets. But that was the very first show she did, Oliver. And then continued on. They did Oklahoma. They did The Music Man. They did Carousel. And she also did what got me into doing shows with her is she did at the College of Notre Dame in Belmont, California. She did A Christmas Carol. And this show, it just really, my parents are very charitable people and very loving people. And the fact that she did this show for so many years, and this is what got me into theater, there was no charge for tickets. All that they asked, you had to reserve in advance, but you bring a toy or a canned food.
I love that.
And it ran for 2 or 3 weekends. And the opening night was always very humble. But by the end of it, you could barely get through the lobby because there were so many toys. And it just, I mean, numerous shelters and food banks received from this. And that show went on for almost 30 years. My mom did 10 seasons, and I did 6.
Now, was A Christmas Carol the first time that you appeared with your mom on stage?
Yes. And it was, I mean, it's funny because, you know, it was very, you know, Liza and Judy. So I just wanted to do like everything she did, including, you know, I saw the ways that she did her makeup. So I went out on stage like a chola, just eyeliner to my hairline. And it took me a while to like back it down because that's what Mom did. And I had the little white lines between the eyeliner
and the little red dots.
Yeah, did all of that. And it's like,
I don't know where that came from, but every community theater across the country did that.
Yeah, and again, it's amazing that I did not become a drag queen. I mean, you see me in my caftans and heels. I somewhat am, but
But, you know, a lot of people, you know, I also came through the ranks of doing community theater. I recommend to everybody, get out of your shell. Even if you don't want to be on stage, work behind the scenes. It's an incredible thing to do, and it builds a sense of community, which I love. But a lot of people, you know, my hometown of South Carolina, a lot of people there love doing community theater, but most of them did not make the jump to pursue it as a career, such as I did. What was the defining factor for you that you said, this is really a life that I want to lead?
It was, so I actually, before I did theater, I did print and TV commercials in San Francisco. So I was like this, I was the most adorable little butterball in the world. And then I hit like an awkward point, and I wasn't going out, and my agent pretty much dropped me, which pushed me towards theater. And I think because it had happened, like I've been doing it for so much of my childhood, it was the only thing I ever really wanted to do. I wanted to sing. I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to be on TV. And it just, once I started, it was just like, well, this is the career path. Like I'm going to go to school. There was never like an aha moment. It's just, this is what I do. And things just kind of worked out. And I did not have the talent starting out, but I stuck with it. And it wasn't so much delusion as much as it's hard. Like, okay, you don't have the talent you need for this, so get it.
Get it.
I come from a working class family. I come from, you know, my grandparents are immigrants and that type of work ethic. So it's just like, okay, make it happen. This is what you want, then get to work. And I still am working. There are still things as a musician that I struggle with, that I'm as an actor that I struggle with, and that I continue to push forward. Because that you're never done studying, you're never done crafting. So yeah, but there's never an aha moment. It was just like, oh yeah, this, and then I was auditioning for schools, and then I was in college, and then I was back working in San Francisco, doing shows and a singing waiter there, until I decided to come to New York, which
where in San Francisco were you a singing waiter?
Max's Opera Cafe on Van Ness, right next to the Opera House. And, you know, that was just, you know, being a waiter, being in the service industry is an experience of its own. But being a waiter who sings, you know, people are funny. Customers are very, very funny. And, you know, they're not aware of how their behavior is sometimes. So they can be very generous and very lovely, but also very demanding. So one time somebody asked if I knew All the Things You Are. And I said, boy, do I. I've been singing that song forever. So they requested that I sing All the Things You Are. And this, you have to like find a way, like you have to check in on all your tables. You have to touch base with your surrounding waiters. I'm going to go sing a song. I'm going to be away for 4 minutes. Please keep an eye on my section. There's a lot of effort into having to sing. And so then I finally sing the song, and I'm looking at the table, and I'm directing the most beautiful love song, I think, ever written, to them. And the guy like raises his glass. And at first I think he's cheersing me, but he raises it and he points and he goes, Diet Coke. Diet Coke. I was like, he's asking for a refill while I'm singing the song that he requested.
And that,
God
folks, in a
bless.
nutshell, is show business.
That right.
Next.
I mean, there's lots of stories, but that is my favorite singing waiter story
No,
ever.
I did singing telegrams. I was a singing waiter, so I empathize with you. I know exactly where you came from. But let's move beyond your family.
Yeah.
Who were the mentors in your life? What was the one teacher that you would say made the biggest impact on your life, whether that be a traditional teacher in the sense of the word, or someone who really set you on your career path?
Yeah, I mean, well, outside of my mother, moving past that because she was the first,
Mm-hmm.
there's two. And the relationship and the bond between a student and a voice teacher is sacred. And when I was in junior high, I was in 7th grade, I met Teddy Lightfoot, who was the person who taught me to match pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And she would just play a note and she'd say, don't sing, close your eyes. And she'd hit a note and she'd say, feel it. She'd hit the note, she said, see it. And then she hit the note, she said, sing it. And that's how my relationship with music was. And she was very spiritual. And specifically from my mother's side, we come from a very spiritual bond. And so she not only guided me on my journey with my voice, but she did it through spirituality. And it was such a beautiful relationship.
Is she still around?
She's not, unfortunately. Okay. And so she died when I was in high school. So it was just a very short time that I was with her, but it was huge. And she put in my path Richard Nicole, who then became my mentor from that point on. And I studied with him.
You talk a lot about Richard in your show. Some of our audience who have been lucky enough to see your show will know the relationship with you and Richard. Yeah. But for those who don't, if you can fill in the blanks with everyone.
Yeah, Richard was a big personality. He had a voice that could stop traffic, and it did. I was there. I witnessed it. He would teach out of the Music Center in San Francisco, and he would demonstrate, and people would, in Union Square, would stop and applaud on the streets. And this is like 2nd or 3rd floor up. He was on track to have a huge career. And then as life happens, he decided to become the voice teacher of San Francisco. And he had done the Marilla program at San Francisco Opera. He toured as Jean Valjean. He toured as Old Deuteronomy. He did all of the big opera companies in the Bay Area. Phenomenal, gifted, genius voice teacher, but not perfect. And when I graduated from school, I went back to study with him, and I worked for him as his personal assistant, as his bookkeeper, as everything, his housekeeper, did all his grocery shopping in exchange for lessons. And there was just nights until 2, 3 a.m. In the studio going over music. He wanted to put me on the track for Jean Valjean. And so going over Bring Him Home, every beat, every story, all this. But unfortunately, Richard did struggle with demons. And that was a lot. I was very young and impressionable. And in my family, we have, not my immediate family, but in my larger family, there are issues with addiction and substance abuse. And so I'd grown up with it earlier than I probably should have, more than anyone should. And I denied it with Richard, and I worked hard to keep him alive and to give him everything he needed.
Did you feel that you were responsible for his life at this point?
At that point, yes. It was, I did everything: the grocery shopping, the cleaning the house. There were 3 of us, and we worked, but I was the one on site every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a matter of help keeping up appearances, driving him to doctors, which I did not realize that as soon as I dropped him off, he would leave, but be right back when I needed to pick him up. And it was a huge weight for a young 20-something to carry. And also, this is the person who's in charge of my voice, my future, my career. And it started to strain. It started to weigh on me, and I had to leave Richard. And it was in every way grieving the loss of a life. We had to separate. He was no longer my voice teacher. He was no longer my mentor. He was no longer my employer. He was no longer my friend. And it was very difficult. And I felt that I was only enabling him. And I had to make that tough decision to leave him, because I had nothing else to offer him but to allow him to hit rock bottom. And the thing about rock bottom that people have to understand is it's not a cure-all. It is the only hope, though. So but the chances are you hit rock bottom and you get back up, or you hit rock bottom and you stay there. And that's a hard decision that I had to be like, I have to let him do this. And a few years after I had left him, he actually hit rock bottom, and he died. And so, and it was a lot, because now I have to grieve him a second time. And it's just everything about loving someone with all your heart and hating them at the same time. I hate you. And it's been years, and it's still like, even when you said, do you want to talk about mentors? It's just, I get a tingle. I have this, I keep it by anytime I perform, I have this little ring of his.
Wow.
And I tuck it away in my suit for every performance. It's by my side, and my living room concerts. I keep it out. I set it up. It's part of it. And it's still, when you lose somebody, and when you're dealing with someone with substance abuse and you lose them twice.
My father. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah. So you understand. And it's still there. And there are beautiful things that Richard did, not just for me, but for an entire community in San Francisco. And there are hurtful things that he did. And that's loving an addict, is that this is the full picture. This is who they are. This is what they did. And this is the impact they left in your life, good, bad, and ugly. It's humanity. Yeah.
Now, I think you and I talked about this once before. You've done a show celebrating Mario Lanza, and I did this show celebrating Carol Channing.
Yes.
San Francisco is Carol Channing's hometown. Yep. And she talked about all of the musical opportunities that were available to her growing up as a young girl in San Francisco. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to be very honest with me. Growing up in San Francisco, with the opportunities that were there, did you feel that you were a big fish in a small pond, or did you feel that you were a small fish in a big pond?
It's it depends. There's a lot of ponds in San Francisco, and so to some, I seem like a big fish, and to others, it was just like, who's this guppy? And there's the politics in the different circles of community theaters, of the regional theaters. So there were some where I would say I was very much a medium-sized fish, and I was happy with that, because I worked consistently, and I didn't, and if one pond was not interested in me swimming in their waters, I just didn't go there. So there was opportunities, and there were closed doors. I would say equally. But again, going back to that whole thing about with my family, just get it done. I'm not going to waste my time on this pond. I'm going to work in the other one, and then maybe they'll see me, maybe they won't. But I'm going to get the work done here that I need to get done. So that's what I would say, and I worked in the city. I worked far outreaches because when you're doing theater in San Francisco, you are doing theater in a 45 to an hour radius of driving. So you're doing North Bay, East Bay, San Jose. You're doing it all. And so it's a lot of gas. It's a lot of mileage. And sometimes you're doing, which happened to me, I was doing a show in Martinez, which is like Northeast Bay.
Mhm.
And then once that show opened, I was rehearsing in San Jose. And it was just this, I was going the full circle all the time. So working in San Francisco, it's crazy. It's really
Now,
crazy.
what was the time lapse between you're no longer working with Richard and you coming to New York?
So I left Richard in 2007. And interestingly enough, as things happen, I ended up getting this weird like throat issue. And so it was amazing how you kind of, I rejected all of this. I got him out of my life, and all of a sudden my voice becomes segmented because your body responds to this type of trauma. And it was very bizarre. And so for 3 years, I worked on sorting that out. And what it turned out to be was an undiagnosed ingrown tooth that was coming out and causing all these things. So once that was taken care of, then it was like, now we heal the voice. And did that. And I worked the entire time. All that was going on. Wisdom teeth out, voice was segmented. I kept working and get things done. And so it was 3 years between me leaving Richard and coming to New York, which just happened. I went to go visit. I was between shows. I had done the Christmas show that I was doing, which was the craziest thing. I'm not a dancer. And I was doing this Christmas production in which we were these giant elves with these like hula hoop tops. And we were wearing like wellies, the rain boots, and everything was glitter and everything was heavy. And it was 21 singing and dancing numbers back to back for 2 hours. 7 shows a week. I lost 20 pounds. I would like go to Carl's Jr. and just like eat because it was like I was starving because of all the workout. But I that show was just like so exhausting, so fun. It was a fun show, but it was so exhausting. And then I had another show that was rehearsing in January, and I had 6 days. And so last minute, I booked tickets to New York to visit my friend and came over New Year's, which is really not a fun time to actually come to New York. It's not as glamorous as you'd think. Right. And it was between blizzards. So they had just had a blizzard. And
what year was this again?
That was 2009 going into 2010. And they had just had a blizzard right before I arrived. In San Francisco, 41 degrees is very cold. Is very cold. And I came up to New York and it was like 17 degrees. And I did not know that your bones could hurt from the cold. And
did you have the proper clothing when you came here?
No.
I
thought I did.
When I arrived in New York, this was in 79, long before this. I arrived in New York on one of the hottest days that I'd ever experienced in my life. And I grew up in the South. Yeah. But humidity in New York was something that I had never experienced before. And I will never forget stepping off the plane. And in those days, you stepped out off the plane on a tarmac to make your way towards LaGuardia. And I thought I was going to pass out from the heat that I just had never experienced before.
Well, it's the extremes that get you. And, and I fell in love on that trip in the coldest that I've ever experienced over New Year's. Like everything was working against New York, and I fell in love. And 4 months later, I moved here. So as soon as I came back, I finished that contract. I stopped accepting work, and I was working towards moving to New York. And then when I got here, and it was late April into May, and everyone says, oh, so May's kind of decent weather, blah, blah, blah. It's August you have to worry about. Well, the year I moved, August came in the middle of May, and it stayed through September. And so just because you brought up humidity, again, from San Francisco, you are wearing a sweater all year long. And so it was just horrible. And I called my abuelita, my grandmother, she's from El Salvador. And I said, abuelita, I don't understand this heat. It's suffocating. It's disgusting. And I don't know if I'm going to make this. And she goes, oh, hijo, I hate that weather too. I can't stand humidity. And I said, but you're from El Salvador. Like, this should be in my blood. And she goes, hijo, why do you think we moved to San Francisco?
God bless her. That's wonderful. So I want to talk about the move. I mean, you
Yeah.
come to New York. Where did you first live when you first came to New York?
My first place, sight unseen, imagine that, was in Brooklyn. And a friend from UC Irvine was living out here at the time, and she wasn't too far from where I was going. And I found this on Craigslist. And it was Brooklyn. It was deep in Brooklyn. And I sent my friend to go look at it. She said, yeah, it seems great. It was a great price. And so she sent me pictures, and she said they seem like trustworthy people. Like these are real people. They're not going to take your deposit and run. So did that, move there, and it was crazy. The first month was fine, but then when that humidity came in, and it was just disgusting, and I wasn't used to it. And that was a World Cup year, and this was a West African neighborhood, and Ghana was like blowing up that year. Like they were doing so well. So all night, all day, it was those horns. And it was just like, oh my God, I love you, but can Ghana please just win so we can end this? And my bedroom was on a fire escape, so I had to get a different type of air conditioning unit, which was more expensive than the ones you could get at. I lived down the street from a place called Fat Albert's, and it was like this just deals and discounts types. It was a warehouse with everything you need, very cheap. I got my mattress there. I got my air conditioning unit there. I got a job at Sardi's, and I bought my tuxedo shirt there. Everything you need.
Was that your first job in New York at Sardi's?
God, yes. Well, so I did two things. So I did that. My friend, who he mentored me on a project in college through emails, is a producer here in New York, and I was so brave back then. I just emailed him and I said, I really love this show that you produced, and I'd like to know where I can get the music because I'm putting a benefit concert on as my project in school. And he emailed me back, and we started this correspondence. And when I came out to New York with my college, we met and all that. So when I moved out to New York, he was producing. He no longer does this. I thought it was wonderful. I'm very sad that he's not doing it anymore. It was this play festival called Gay Fest, and it was featuring queer artists, playwrights, all that. And Bruce Robert Harris.
Oh,
yeah, and Jack Batman.
I know. Yes, I know them both very well. Wow.
Yeah, and so Bruce was like, "Oh, you're coming out? Great. I can give you this much," and it was a very small amount. He goes, and I worked backstage. I was, for one show, I was the ASM. The next show, I worked the bar in the lobby. It was different things, whatever they needed. And it was like $200 a week for just being a TaskRabbit.
But you're living
a low budget festival
in New York for what it is. For you live your dream.
And and this is from an email that I sent in college. And Bruce Robert Harris has been there every step of the way. He's the first person to email me whenever something goes right in my career. He's such a man. She actually introduced me to Jamie DeRoy, who I'm Jamie's bookkeeper. And
I know that. And I was going to ask you, how did that come about? Bruce.
Well, because this is the thing. Bruce, when he gave me the job at Gay Fest, he said, "You're going to work for me for pennies because that's what I can afford." Because all of the money for Gay Fest went back out in the community.
Right.
So it was charity. So when you work in charity, you don't have money. So they did amazing things because they just gave it back out to the community. And he said, "You're going to work for me for pennies, and I'm going to introduce you to people." And so, he came through with his word. 3 months later, he said, "Jamie is looking for a bookkeeper. And I remember you talking that's what you did in San Francisco." So I went and met Jamie DeRoy. We just celebrated our 10 years together. Working with her, I get paid to see a show every day. She is so funny, just naturally, just walking around the house. And she's also just such a generous.
And gorgeous cats.
Oh, and the cats and the tchotchkes. Oh my God, she has these little trinkets all over the house. It is the most adorable place. I love going there. I actually was there a month ago, and she was going through old tapes, and I'm working, and it was basically, she was going through the best of Jamie DeRoy, not on purpose. She was like, "Oh, what's this tape about?" And it's her working the room. It's her in these sequin dresses. I was like, "Jamie DeRoy, stop right now." It was It was phenomenal. So Jamie, it was with Bruce, then Sardi's, then working with Jamie, all together. All because New York is about having multiple jobs. But yes, I did work at Sardi's, and that it was such a weird experience because it's an institution.
Oh yes,
it's an institution,
and I pray to God it comes back.
Oh, I'm right there with you because
I can't imagine New York without Sardi's. It's one of my favorite places in the world.
They make the best Manhattans. Joe, God, people have longevity there.
You may have waited on me long before I knew you.
I'm sure I did. I actually remember. Oh God, the thing is, so believe it or not, most of the people who worked at Sardi's were not theater people.
Mm-hmm.
And so
but I will say this, I mean, you've moved on, but a lot of the people who were still at Sardi's were there 40 years ago when I first came to New York.
And they know a lot, but they're not theater people. They are so good at what they do. And there's this little old gentleman, his name is Agron, and he has 2 shifts a week, and he has a fan club of these ladies who request his section, and he does these 2 lunch shifts a week. And it's just it's an amazing place. They obviously relied on me to let them this is in a month. I had everyone mapped out. I'm like, okay, Carol's here, Mona Hellman's here. I mean, not Mona, Catherine Hellman's here. And I knew where everyone was. And so one time Carol Channing was there filming her documentary. This was between services. And
yeah, I know that day very well.
It was amazing. And I'm giddy. I'm just like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. And there's this one waiter, God bless him. He was really pretty. He said, why are you so excited? And I was like, Carol Channing is right there. And she had her at that point, she was wearing the little ponytail on top.
Yes.
And she's telling these stories. And it's Carol Channing. And he goes, oh, wasn't that the lady from Greece? And I said, that's Stalker Channing. How dare you?
Well, when this is over, because I don't want to make this about me, when this is over, I will tell you about my first time at Sardi's with Carol Channing.
Oh, I can't.
Very funny story.
I can't wait.
But, so did you start auditioning for things when you were in New York? Or how did, beyond Bruce and Jamie, 2 great connections, how are you finding the work here?
Right away. Hit the ground running, and just start auditioning. And I was non-equity when I moved here, and I had the EMC card, which is you're a candidate, you work on the point system. So I was seen before non-equity, but I wasn't. It was still long days, and in that humidity, pounding the pavement in the humidity. But also there were things I didn't know because when I moved, audition season was technically over. There were still plenty of auditions. But when I moved, I was like, oh yeah, no, the summer work's already been done. But I kept going. And Bruce gave my name to people as he could. And I got seen at auditions. When I moved here, it was a very weird time to move because I was 26, but I've always presented much older. And so I would get called in for these father roles. And at the time, a 26-year-old standing next to a 42-year-old, the 42-year-old looks more 42. I next to a 26-year-old look 42, but next to a 42, they look like the father. So I didn't work for a long time, but I kept going and I little bit things, but I did end up booking in July. I went to audition for Westchester Broadway Theater, and they
just closed.
I know they just closed, and
I cried over that. I really did.
They were my first job. I went there, I auditioned, and it was sometimes, as much of a musical theater nerd as I am, I'm still catching up. So I was auditioning for Robert Cuccioli. And I was not as phased as I should have been. And everyone's like, it's Robert Cuccioli, da 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 da. And I was just like, okay, sounds good. He's handsome, like whatever. And I was like, holy moly, this is Jekyll. And I'm glad I didn't put it together until after the audition.
What was the show?
Jekyll and Hyde.
Wow. And you got
it. And I got it. I was Sir Proops. And it was such an experience. and we were the long contract. So that September contract goes into February. We were the long running show of their season, with a break for their Christmas show. And in that blue van that was very much like from Who's the Boss, we met at 44th and 10th every day, and we went up to Westchester. We rehearsed at NOLA, which is no longer around anymore, that rehearsal studio. And I got my card doing that show. And, you know, it was an amazing experience, because it was a lot of the cast. It was their first show in New York City, and a lot of the cast got their card doing that show. And we were working with some phenomenal talent. We were working with Robert Cuccioli, for goodness sakes, and Uncle Leo Carasone. We call him Uncle Leo. He was phenomenal. He was the musical director that you dream of, and he was sassy, he was funny, and he got things done. And he was just wonderful. I think he's the reason I booked the show, because I went in there. This is actually what happened. So I went in there, and they said, we want you to sing something with character that shows that you're funny, that you have character, and all that. So I went in, I sang My Conviction from Hair, which is, you know, the Margaret Mead big drag queen number. Again, all these drag queen things keep coming.
They recorded it for the movie, and it was cut from the movie.
And it's such a great song. I still sing it to this.
Yeah,
I sing it to this day. It's my King George for Hamilton.
Oh, that's great.
And because it's a great one. So
That's
I sing
your
that,
future.
and then I get the call back for the afternoon, and I go in there, and at that point I think I realized it was Robert Cuccioli. And so, being young and stupid, I switch my song and I sing Anthem, which, singing Anthem for a Jekyll Hyde audition, like, how original. And everyone's just kind of like, you know, because I sang Anthem, whatever. And Uncle Leo goes, at the time he had a paralyzed vocal cord, and he goes, hey, didn't you sing My Conviction? And I was like, yes, I sang it. And so he made me sing My Conviction for the room. And then I booked the job, and it was amazing. And it was like, there's little things that happen in my life that, like, you may not be where you want to be, but you're on the right path. And this, moving to New York, and that was my first callback and my first booking right away. Like, it doesn't happen that way.
Well, it happened for you.
Yeah.
So it happens that way.
Yeah.
Now, before I don't want us to run out of time, but I really want to focus on the work that you've done in Cabaret, because that's how you and I came to know each other. And you've established yourself and nominations, and you're nominated again. I think for the Broadway Award. Yeah, well, thank you. But you've, how did you step into the waters of Cabaret?
So, you know, doing open mic in San Francisco, we had this wonderful resource. It was called the Octavia Lounge. It's no longer there, and it was across the street.
I performed there.
I love the Octavia Lounge. It was great. They had great food.
Carly Ozart is watching here, and Carly and I met at the Octavia Lounge. I love her so much.
Carly,
yes,
who got me into Cabaret, because I saw her debut show at the Octavia Lounge, Bitter and Be Gay. I think that was the name of her first show, and it floored me. It floored me. And so when I came to, so I'd always wanted to do it, but then I ended up moving to New York and all these things. And then Carly, she works so hard. The connections she's made in San Francisco, she goes to everyone's show. She pounds the pavement. She goes to every open mic. She puts in the work, and is so generous with matching friends and with song, friends with this. She's very generous with that. And so in 2013, I decided I'm ready to do a cabaret. And then 7 years later, I finally did it. Actually, she set me up with Stephen Ray Watkins and Lenny Watts. And, and she had taken me to see, at the time, Lenny Watts was doing a show called Bloody, Bloody Lenny Watts.
Yes.
Oh my God, I was laughing so hard. And then all of a sudden I'm like, why am I crying? Why am I crying? He's so brilliant at delivering a story and creating an arc. And so,
I mean, I will say this, and, you know, Lenny Watts is an amazing, amazing, amazing talent. Yeah. He's funny. He can have you in tears in one moment. And God bless him as a director, because he's a brilliant director, but I'd love to see more of him on stage.
He's phenomenal. And so I took the class because Carly Ozark told me, take this class. And they were doing this Christmas arrangement class. And so what we worked out is that with the class, Lenny would direct, Steven would be my musical director, and they sent me off to San Francisco to do my pre-New York debut. And that was my holiday test drive. And so at Martuni's, I did my very first cabaret, and it was Holiday Test Drive. And it was Holiday Test Drive, fun little name because we're test driving cabaret to bring it back to New York. And then things just kept happening to push off that New York debut. But I kept doing the Holiday Test Drives. And all these years later, I was out of clients, bookkeeping clients, and I was listening to Spotify. I was listening to Mario Lanza. And I started to cry, and I was just like, because I was all these shows, and I have a million cabarets in my head, all these shows, and I was listening to Mario Lanza, and I just burst into tears, and it was like, oh, and the show just wrote itself right then and there, and I was like, I need to do a tribute to Mario Lanza, and surprise, it's actually a tribute and a journey of healing about my relationship with my mentor. And friend.
Which is brilliant. I mean, just brilliant. I love the fact that you incorporated his music in terms of telling your story, because I didn't know a lot about you, even though thank you for asking me to come in and help with your PR. But sitting in the audience, and the real test is bringing my friends that are not cabaret people. My friend Victoria Chen, who I know is watching, she, yes, just fell in love with you, as everyone does when they're sitting in the audience, because you don't know what to expect. It's a Mario Lanza show, so are we just going to get the history of Mario Lanza
sung by a lyric baritone?
Yes, and you really, I mean, what you do is the training that you put into recreating that sound is amazing. So kudos to you.
Thank you. That was, I mean, and that was a really big journey. I had to train as a tenor, even though I was not going to be singing every song in his key. A majority of them I did sing in his key, but I still had to train as a tenor to take some of that baritone weight out to facilitate that Mario ring. You have to get that ring, and the lower resonance will take care of itself. And it actually changed the way I look at myself as a singer, and not needing to be, I'm a baritone. Like I could be whatever. I could be a tenor today and a baritone tomorrow and an alto on Friday. Like you just have to honor your voice. And it was a beautiful journey in many different ways. It really healed and celebrated my relationship and what Richard taught me. And Mario Lanza's music was a soundtrack to that. And what happened with that show is, when I was promoting it, people would come up to me and say, I haven't heard that name in years. And then they would tell me their story about Mario Lanza. And they would tell, and another person would come up and tell me it's, I can smell the food in my nonna's kitchen. And one story, and it's just, this is amazing. This is why we need to continue to make music. One woman came up to me and she said, I had no idea who Mario Lanza was until my father was dying. And we had taken him home. He was on hospice, and the doctor said, make him comfortable. And she went down to the basement and she found this old stack of records. And she went through all of them. And when she put on Mario Lanza, her father, he was not twitching. He was not in pain. He just relaxed. And so her last moments sitting with her father, where it was with Mario Lanza. And
that's great.
It's just such a beautiful, like, this is music touches people, and it strikes a chord and brings back memory. And so it was the right time to bring up Mario Lanza, because everyone was telling me these stories, and it wasn't about me sharing my story. It was about people coming up to me and sharing their Mario stories. And that one gets me. That one gets me because it's so beautiful that even from beyond, he can still have an impact on someone's life.
I can't believe this, but we are at the end of our program.
Oh my God.
Yes. hour just flew by. But before we go, I want to thank everybody. First of all, thank you, Sean. Thank you for the gifts that you've given to the world and that you will continue to give. Thank you for being here and spending an hour with me on a gorgeous Saturday in New York. I want to thank all of you for stopping by and spending an hour with us. I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you did, and if you haven't done so already, please go to my guest book at richardskipper.com and sign my guest book with your thoughts about the show. That helps to boost me and book me in other markets. I also end every show. I want to let you know about tomorrow's show. At 2:00 tomorrow, I am going to be interviewing the Broadway League president, Charlotte St. Martin. And I'm very excited about this interview because, as I said at the beginning of our program, today marks 260 days since the theater has been shut down. And there are rumors that we may not have theater until 2022. So it's, that's painful. So we'll talk to her about what the Broadway Theater League is doing in terms of bringing everyone back. I also end every show by telling them I want to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list. The first name that pops up, give them a call. Not an email, not a text, a phone call, and let them know what they mean to you. And before we end the show, Sean, I'm going to give you the final word. Anything you want to say about anything that we talked about today that you want to expound upon, or anything that we didn't talk about that you wish that we had, or any message that you just want to put out to everyone at this time that we're going through. And again, thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this, Richard, in creating community. And I think that is what is going to get us through this. And much like you just told your viewers to call that friend, really create the community that you need to get through this, and that the community that needs you. Because we do all have something to offer and to share with one another, whether it be cooking a meal for someone, giving them a phone call. We can do something for someone to help. These are rough days, to just get through. Just be simple. My father always told me it's amazing. I used to make fun of him because he was a very straight-laced man, and it really does guide me through this point. Is to always be safe. If you can't be safe, be smart. If you can't be smart, stay home. Oh my gosh, we are living that right now. And so just with that, I also would like to add on, stay kind. Stay kind.
Thank you.
Thank you.